The Middle Ages, also known as the Dark Ages by many 19th century historians, is one of the most intriguing and enigmatic periods in human history. It spanned approximately 1,000 years, from the 5th to the 15th century, beginning with the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD and ending with landmark events such as the fall of Constantinople in 1453 or the beginning of the Age of Exploration. But was this era truly as dark as its nickname suggests? Today we will explore fascinating curiosities about this historical period. Medieval society was structured in a hierarchical system known as feudalism. At the top were kings, followed by nobles and knights, while the majority of the population consisted of peasants who worked the land in exchange for protection. Life was hard for most people, with an average life expectancy of 30 to 40 years. This was largely due to poor hygiene conditions, limited nutrition, and lack of adequate medical knowledge. Interestingly, bathing was a rare habit among the lower classes and even the nobility. It was believed that water could open the pores and allow diseases to enter the body. Thus, many people preferred to avoid bathing, using perfumes and incense to mask odors. During the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church was the most powerful institution in Europe. It controlled not only religious but also political and economic aspects. Monks and clerics were responsible for preserving ancient knowledge by hand-copying manuscripts in isolated monasteries. Despite this, the Church was also responsible for controversial events such as the Crusades and the Inquisition. The Crusades, for instance, were military expeditions aimed at reclaiming the Holy Land from Muslim control. Although promoted as holy wars, they often became violent and disorganized campaigns involving looting and massacres. One of the most terrifying episodes of the Middle Ages was the Black Plague, which reached its peak in the 14th century. It is estimated that this pandemic wiped out about 1/3 of Europe's population, or even more in some regions. It was believed that the disease was a divine punishment, and many bizarre practices emerged in attempts to appease God's wrath. Groups of flagellants, for example, roamed cities, flogging themselves as a form of penance. Additionally, the Black Plague had profound economic and social impacts. With the drastic reduction of the workforce, survivors began demanding better living conditions, planting the seeds for the end of feudalism. Despite often being associated with stagnation, the Middle Ages was also a period of significant advances. It was during this time that the first universities in Europe, such as those in Bologna and Paris, were founded. Furthermore, inventions like the windmill, eyeglasses, and the mechanical clock originated during this period. Another example is Gothic architecture, which brought to the world impressive cathedrals such as Notre Dame de Paris and the Cologne Cathedral. These buildings, with their pointed arches and colourful stained glass, remain symbols of human ingenuity and creativity. Although women were largely subordinate to men, some played important roles during the Middle Ages. Joan of Arc, for example, is one of the most well-known figures of the period. An illiterate peasant, she led French armies against the English during the 100 Years' War, claiming to be guided by divine visions. Additionally, in monasteries, women like Hildegard of Bingen stood out as writers, composers and scholars, challenging the limitations imposed by the society of the time. The end of the Middle Ages was marked by a series of changes that transformed Europe. The Renaissance brought a new appreciation for knowledge and classical culture, while the Age of Exploration expanded the horizons of the known world. The invention of the movable type printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century also revolutionized the way knowledge was disseminated, paving the way for modernity. The Middle Ages may have been a period of hardships and challenges, but it was also an era of transformations, innovations, and fascinating stories. It teaches us that even in the darkest times, humanity is capable of creating, adapting, and evolving. If you enjoyed these curiosities and want to learn more about world history, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.